Hello everyone, I am the Nerdic translator, or Nerdic for short, and this is my introductory lore video. That's right, everyone who knew me before, I'm actually writing lore this time. I'm going to dive right into it in just a moment, but because I don't want to interrupt any of the narrative goodness with the usual calls to action, I'll just say this now. If you see any engagement-related buttons on this page that you haven't clicked on yet, give them a try. What could go wrong? I'd appreciate it. Alright, let's do this. This is the story of the most adorable tragedy you've ever seen. It's a story of loss, of capricious whims, and most importantly, it's a story of opening your fool mouth when you really shouldn't. This is, in fact, the story of how I became a goddamn squirrel. I am Nerdic. At least, that's what people have called me for so long as to make no difference. My name is increasingly foreign to me, becoming harder to remember the longer I spend in this squat, furry form. On the upside, I've never gotten more attention from the ladies, but then, well, water everywhere, and I'm literally too small to drink. I'm not going to pretend that I'm some paragon of virtue. I'd even go so far as to say that perhaps some small sort of curse was in order. I never meant to do any harm, but it'd be accurate to say that I've never known when to keep my mouth shut. In my defense, I was right. That's the thought I cling to when I curl up at night, nibbling on my 10 millionth sunflower seed. At least, I'm pretty sure that I was right. I still remember the night more clearly than anything. I remember the stranger at the bar, tall, dark, and bearded, but with an air of undeniable refinement. I remember the simple wave of his hand and his exasperated expression. But for the life of me, I can't remember what he actually said. Strange that. After all, whatever he said prompted me to say whatever I said, and it was all chittering and trail mix from there on out. I should give you more context. I'm not a teacher, or a researcher, or an expert in any one thing except writing. Some have called me a journalist, but they're wrong, and there I go again. But the point is that I love to learn. I love to explore. I love to know just enough about a thing to get myself into trouble. No matter that I almost always run face first into my limits and scurry back into the realm of what I can reasonably do with my, now literal, tail between my legs. That feeling of discovery as you stumble blindly into a new field of study can't be compared to anything else. At least, it can't be compared to anything that I remember. And in that sense, I got lucky. After all, squirrels can explore in all kinds of places that people just can't. It could be worse. I could have been something far less cute. I spent my days, still spend my days really, always researching something or other for my next book or article. Even with the wonders of the internet at hand, I've become something of a fixture at our local university library, even if I do spend a lot more time dodging around book cart wheels than I used to. One week I'll be researching local urban legends or famous crimes and capers. The next I'll be looking up data tables on the density of motor oil, or trying to wrap my head around the ways that Linux nerds communicate. Turns out it's mostly memes. It's a good life. I've made friends with the library staff, and I sit in on more than a few university lectures every year. And I admit, I do love sharing what I know, if I think it'll be useful to the listener. But, having at least one whole basic social skill, I've learned not to lecture everyone I meet at the drop of a hat. But I am pretty damned good at writing. It's my job, after all. It's the subject most likely to send me off on one tangent or another, and it's the source of my worst habit. I tend to correct people's grammar. It's a reflex, not a reflection on them or even my opinion of them. I just appreciate the proper use of the English language, and I correct people's grammatical mistakes the same way I correct my own, without judgment and without hesitation. Of course, it doesn't always come off that way. And that night, my gentle, habitual helpfulness was directed at the wrong person entirely. That's right, I got turned into a squirrel because I corrected someone's grammar, and that's about all I remember of the conversation. Beware pedants, lest ye suffer the same fate. Or don't. Being a squirrel isn't all bad, and I'm not here to make your life choices for you. The first thing I remember after being transformed is seeing the man I met that night, but he suddenly looked a lot taller than I'd previously guessed. Then he disappeared. No sound, no poof, no sparkles. Just an empty seat beside mine, and Andrew, the bartender, looking down at me with puzzlement. A bartender that was normally an inch or so shorter than myself. I may not remember what words the mysterious man and I exchanged, but this I do remember. The bartender looked down at me and said, "What the? Hey, Greg!" "What?" asked Greg, another irregular at my favorite bar. He's cool, likes animals. "Did you adopt another squirrel?" asked Andrew. "I mean, not lately. Why?" It was at this moment that I, being thoroughly confused, looked around and asked, "What squirrel?" One borrowed hand mirror and half an hour of hyperventilation later, I was laid out on the bar and thoroughly miserable. A veterinarian was yelling at the bartender for giving me a small saucer of watered-down beer. Distilled alcohol, as it happens, is generally poisonous to small animals, but I was too miserable to care about that or much else. Nowadays, I spend my weekends with a carefully selected pile of fermented fruit, but I digress. That night and the following few days were spent panicking, then worrying more quietly, and calling my friends and my publisher. It took some doing to explain that no, this wasn't some elaborate prank. I was a squirrel now, and while I intended to keep on living my life more or less as I had before, I would require certain considerations. Accommodations, even. It's strange. My life was certainly altered on a grand scale, but at the same time, it's surprising just how accommodating people can be when you're small, furry, and arguably better looking than you were before. Sure, there were those who were tempted to try to take advantage of my newfound size and comparative weakness. A quiet reminder that a squirrel's jaw is designed for doing unspeakable things to nuts, and that I had a pretty good lawyer, led most of these to reconsider their actions. In the following months, I put my research skills to use. The man had had tattoos, some of which I remembered quite clearly. There'd been a particularly striking example that featured mistletoe and snakes. Again, it took some doing, and consulting with various experts on mythology and the occult, but eventually I had a theory. In a stroke of luck, and thanks to an act of great friendship, the university hosted a conference on mythology. I don't think it was done for my benefit exactly, but one of my friends at the library was the one to suggest it to the administrators, and I guess they liked the idea. Thank you, Susan, you're fantastic. It was there that I met Lauren, you're also fantastic, an anthropologist who'd specialized in Norse mythology. She gave me my first real clue. First, she needed to freak out, then gush about how awesome it is to meet a real talking squirrel. I mean, I'm sorry that happened to you, but this is so unbelievably cool. Then, understandably, she needed to freak out some more about the implications of real magic. Once all of that was done, and she was calm enough to talk, I got the answers I needed. Mistletoe and snakes, as it turns out, are symbols commonly associated with Loki. Figures, I had to find a literal Norse god and try to reason with him. In the end, funnily enough, that's exactly what I did. I found Loki, and I reasoned with him after a fashion. It'd be nice to tell you that I went on some grand quest. A squirrel, his loyal cat, and a company of humans braving gods, monsters, and impossible cold to find Loki and make him break the curse. But that's not how it happened. Firstly, my cat is loyal only so long as my squirrel-sized paws can still properly operate the can opener. The first few days were a near thing indeed. My human friends, though wonderful, simply aren't built for adventuring, and my ability to scamper through trees and absolutely demolish a bag of trail mix, while charming and useful, wouldn't be enough to sway an actual god. As it happens, I didn't need to search all that far. I found Loki in what was, in retrospect, the first place I should have looked. I found he was in my heart all along. I'm kidding. Can you imagine? No. I found him on Craigslist. He was running an ad under his real name, promoting technically legal ironic consequences. If you have cash and an enemy, you can hire the literal Norse god of mischief to dispose of both for you, legally. At first, I thought this was some sort of prank ad or just some wise guy having a little fun with his side hustle. But I was bored that day. On a whim, I made an appointment to see this Loki. I thought that, if nothing else, one or both of us would get a good laugh out of a prankster meeting a talking squirrel. For extra irony points, I arranged to meet him at the bar where we'd first met. And there he was in the doorway, tall, bearded, and tattooed just like I remembered. My tiny heart went cold, and I nearly ran. Andrew froze, and slowly, the bar went silent. Some of the patrons had been there that night, the rest had heard the story. Loki, for his part, looked entirely unbothered. If anything, he was pleased. He smiled warmly, and the worst part is that it looked genuine. He made his way to the bar, where I stood on my hind legs, staring him in the eye. He sat. As the surrounding conversations cautiously resumed, he said, I remember you. How's, He gestured towards me. Truth be told, I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him that this was bullshit! That it was an insane overreaction. That I wanted my body back. Deciding that sensible terror was the better part of valor, I simply said, "It's honestly gone better than I expected." He laughed. "So you're happy as a squirrel?" "I didn't say that," I said carefully. "Just that it could have been much worse. Even so, could you see your way to, if it's not too much trouble, turning me back? I do sincerely apologize for having given offense, and I can promise you that I'll never correct your grammar again." He raised an eyebrow and said, "I noticed that you said your grammar, not anyone's grammar." "I know better than to make promises I can't keep," I replied. He laughed again and said, "Fair enough. I can't just turn you back, though. It's the look of the thing. Don't want father thinking I've gone soft." That last was said with a wink. I nodded thoughtfully. "Do I need to perform some act of heroism?" "No, knowing you, some act of cleverness, I guess. An offering, maybe." Loki smiled more softly now. I think I like you better this way. Your brain might be smaller, but you're using it." "Yes, an act of..." He looked around. "Barkeep, did I pay my tab when I was last here?" Andrew blanched. "I wasn't going to say anything." He waved the man away, saying, "I'll take that as a no." He turned back to me. "Very well, pay my tab and we'll call it even." I asked Andrew how much Loki's tab was. He told me. It was my turn to blanch. Loki had apparently been drinking for quite some time before I came along. The bartender later told me that he couldn't be sure, but it might have been days. It had nearly bankrupted the bar, and Andrew had to arrange round-the-clock shifts with other staff. He'd only let Loki run his tab up that high because, despite not knowing who he was, it just felt like a bad idea to stop. To his credit, the bartender offered to clear the tab there and then, but Loki would have none of it. I've made my decision. An offering must be made, and you have your quest, I suppose," he said. Loki continued. "Do this, and it'll be an act of service and cleverness both, or at least an act of perseverance. Make the money any way you like, but it can't be a gift. Pay my tab, and you can be human again. The details I leave to you." It's been some time since then, and I confess it's slow going. Work, pay my bills, pay off my squirrel become human fund. I'm doing my best. To retain what remains of my never-abundant sanity, I've started this channel to discuss writing, and indie games while I'm at it. Maybe one day I'll make enough cash to finally become human again. Maybe I won't. In the meantime, friends of all species, if you can learn anything from my tale, let it be this. If you're going to correct someone's grammar in public, get a good look at them first. It turns out the gods are watching, and they're, delightful, absolutely wonderful, just and fair, and I'd never say otherwise, because they're watching. And because I know people are going to ask, Loki's only on Craigslist, but Tlaloc is on Facebook, and Zeus is on Tinder, Instagram, and Bumble, weirdly enough. Bastet is on all the cat picture subreddits. Apophis, the Egyptian god of darkness and disorder, runs YouTube and Twitch, if you can believe that. He's doing so well. Okay, that's my lore. At least for now. If you want to see me turn human, I either need to make this channel surprisingly profitable very fast, or if anyone has a job for me, I actually do write in real life. Nowadays, I try not to correct people's grammar for free. Maybe then I can put together another lore video. I hope you enjoyed this silly little look into my brain, and if you'd like to read any of my proper short stories, they're all available to read for free on nerdictranslator.com. And if you've made it this far without liking, subscribing, or hitting the bell notification icon, please consider doing all of that stuff now. I'd really appreciate it. I have been Nerdic, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.